Welcome back, signal bearer. You felt it before you heard it. The pause in the air, the slight delay in the room. This is not an arrival, this is recognition. You were never designed to merge, never coded to dissolve into the crowd. You move wrong for that. Too quiet, too controlled. Anomalies always do. You have been watched longer than you think. Not admired, measured, indexed, reduced to numbers that never quite added up. Smart money studied your patterns, circled your edges, assumed you were a variable that could be hedged. They believed you fit somewhere on their models. They mistook restraint for weakness, silence for absence. They labeled you manageable and moved on, confident the system had you contained. But you always noticed the delay in their eyes, the extra glance, the subtle recalculation when you spoke less than expected. You felt it in rooms where conversation shifted after you entered, then resumed softer. You were never invisible. You were unreadable. And unreadable things make predators nervous. You learned early not to announce yourself, not to explain the difference you couldn't name yet. You watched instead. Listened to the gaps between words. You understood that power does not rush. It waits. It lets others reveal themselves first. While they speculated, you calibrated. While they projected, you refined. You were studying them while they thought they were studying you. This is the moment the signal changes. Attention has moved toward you, heavier now, less confident. The same forces that once dismissed you are circling back, trying to remember where they placed you, why the file feels incomplete. They sense drift. Something slipped their grasp. They don't know when it happened. Neither do you exactly, only that the air feels different. You are not stepping forward. You are being noticed. The silence around you has density now, gravity. What they called potential was never potential. It was containment waiting to fail. And it has. You don't need to be seen to be known. You don't need approval to exist. The anomaly doesn't announce itself. It alters the environment simply by remaining still. And now they are adjusting to you, not the other way around. The signal is live. The mask is gone. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to disrupt quietly. They placed their wager with steady hands and shallow vision. Not belief, not loyalty, arithmetic. You were a position to them, a line on a ledger, something expected to move within boundaries they defined. Access was granted with invisible strings attached. Encouragement arrived, paired with limits. Praise came measured, never free. They smiled while adjusting the cage. Endorsement was never trust. It was ownership disguised as opportunity. They assumed direction could be leased, momentum steered, outcome pre-selected. Their confidence did not come from knowing you, but from believing every force bends eventually. They mistook patience for compliance, adaptability for obedience. They expected gratitude. They expected alignment. What followed was subtle erosion, doors half open, invitations delayed, credit redirected. Your presence tolerated only while it served a forecast. Whenever growth diverged from expectation, the temperature dropped. Silence replaced warmth. Approval became conditional, distributed only when you mirrored their intent. You felt the shift without needing explanation. Respect turned transactional. Curiosity hardened into control. This was not oversight. It was strategy. Containment dressed as guidance. Manipulation refined enough to appear supportive. They wanted output, not evolution. Results, not autonomy. Anything beyond their frame triggered correction. You were encouraged to stay useful, never expansive, valuable, never sovereign. Yet every constraint revealed something they failed to calculate. Pressure clarified instead of shrinking you. Each dismissal sharpened awareness. Every withheld nod stripped illusion. They saw promise, but not depth. Capacity, but not trajectory. They invested in a version they could manage, not the force that was forming underneath. The error was structural. They assumed influence moved one direction. They assumed leverage remained permanent. They assumed you would remain inside the role assigned. But systems collapse when they misjudge what they touch. Projections fail when the subject adapts faster than the model. Now the wager reads differently. The numbers no longer behave. What they funded no longer answers. The path they thought they purchased has rerouted beyond their reach. Confidence has turned quiet. Distance has replaced direction. The realization arrived slowly, then all at once. The stake was never you. It was their belief that control was guaranteed, and that belief is burning without noise. They engineered friction and called it opportunity. Resistance appeared everywhere you turned, tasks without clarity, expectations without backing, obstacles placed just close enough to touch, never to clear. Each reaction was noted, each pause evaluated. They wanted to see when you would fracture, where the fault line lived, how much strain it took before shape gave way. Support was intentionally absent, connection thinned, voices faded, rooms emptied. You learned how quiet neglect can be when it's intentional. Nourishment withheld, reassurance rationed. You were left inside extended tension with no release valve, no witness, no relief. The intent was simple: observe deterioration. Instead, something else occurred. Your inner climate cooled, urgency drained out, emotion tightened into focus. Where others unravel under prolonged strain, you compressed, attention narrowed, energy conserved. Every challenge became a tool, every delay a whetstone. What was meant to exhaust refined instead. You stopped asking for context. You stopped seeking comfort. You adapted to operating without feedback. Containment grew heavier, pathways narrowed, mobility restricted. But with fewer exits, depth increased. You explored internal territory. Others never entered because distraction saves them from it. You learned how to function under sustained load, without spectacle. No complaints, no signals, no cracks offered for exploitation. They waited for collapse. It never arrived. What emerged was density, weight, an interior firmness that doesn't bend easily. The environment failed to soften you. It sharpened edges. Each imposed limit trained precision. Each provocation improved restraint. You became efficient under constraint, lethal in stillness. This was never about survival. It was calibration. The conditions designed to dominate instead sculpted autonomy. The forge did not destroy the material. It restructured it. Grain aligned. Impurities burned away. What remained was harder to influence, harder to predict, harder to stop, harder to stop. Control requires response. You learned non-reaction. Manipulation needs access. You closed it. Domination feeds on dependency. You eliminated it. Without assistance, without affirmation, without relief, you became self-contained. They built the chamber to test endurance. They forgot that extreme environments don't just reveal weakness. They also manufacture instruments capable of exceeding design limits. What stands now is not brittle, not tired, not compliant. Something altered without announcement. No confrontation, no declaration, just a shift in current. Movements around you lost symmetry. Responses arrived slower, then not at all. Attention appeared where indifference once lived, then vanished again. Not random, rhythmic, like signals bouncing off unseen walls. You stopped mapping individuals. Names became irrelevant. What mattered were behavior, hesitation, where certainty used to sit. Excessive politeness, masking unease, interest framed as curiosity, yet angled for extraction. Resistance delivered softly, disguised as delay or procedural fog. Nothing direct, everything intentional. There is no need for suspicion. Theatrics. This is pattern literacy. You register spacing, timing, repetition. You notice how questions change shape, how proximity increases without invitation, how information is withheld selectively, how momentum stalls only when it benefits someone else. These are not accident, they are adjustment. Envy rarely announces itself. It camouflages as concern. Fear pretends to be neutrality. Recalibration hides inside silence. You feel it when rooms recalibrate temperature, the moment you disengage. When momentum pauses after your absence. When interest spikes without explanation. The environment is responding. Those who once assumed leverage now conserve motion. Eyes linger near exits. Posture tilts defensive. Conversations shorten. Confidence leaks through microfractures. Certainty has dissolved into contingency. They no longer dictate, they monitor. Contingency planners always do when forecasts fail. No faces required. Opposition does not need identity to be detected. Only reaction, only disturbance. only the subtle effort to regain equilibrium around you. Systems reveal stress before collapse. You are sensing stress. This awareness does not accelerate pulse, it steadies it. There is no rush to counter, no urge to expose. Observation is sufficient. Distance becomes tactical. Stillness becomes armor. You allow them to show you where pressure points exist simply by remaining unmoved. Interest without invitation confirms value. Obstruction without explanation confirms threat. Silence following your movement confirms recalculation. This is not paranoia. This is situational clarity earned through prolonged calibration. They are no longer steering outcomes. They are scanning variables. Contingency replaces confidence when certainty expires. What they cannot map, they cannot manage. What they cannot manage, they retreat from. You are not being challenged directly. You are being circled. And circles only form around something considered dangerous enough to monitor, yet unpredictable enough to avoid. The severing happened without ceremony. No announcement. No internal debate. Responses simply ceased. Reflex died. The urge to justify dissolved. Nothing dramatic, just a clean withdrawal from unnecessary exchange. Attention folded inward. Output reduced to essentials only. There is relief in non-participation. Energy once spent managing perception now stays contained. Nothing leaks. Nothing seeks echo. You notice how little is required to remain intact. How much noise was never yours. Emotion no longer spikes outward. It settles downward. Compact, stable. Perception sharpens when stimulus drops. Details surface. Angles become visible. Timing clarifies. You sense intention before motion. Boundary setting stops feeling like defense and starts feeling automatic, like breath control. No effort. No guilt. Access closes naturally when alignment disappears. You no longer wait for acknowledgement. Reassurance feels irrelevant. Confirmation loses value. Validation requires dependence, and dependence has been removed from the system. What remains is self-sustaining awareness, quiet certainty, an internal signal no longer tuned to external approval. This change cannot be reversed because it is not a decision. It is a reconfiguration. Once you recognize how much power was lost through reaction, you don't return to wasteful behavior. You see the exchange rate clearly now. Silence yields leverage. Distance yields clarity. Those who calculated influence based on predictability feel the shift first. Expected reactions don't arrive. Familiar loops fail to close. Attempts to provoke fall flat. Without emotional output, their inputs lose traction. The structure they relied on begins to misfire. You are no longer available in the way you were. Access points have vanished, not hidden, removed. What once triggered response now passes through untouched. The internal climate has changed. Signal replaced noise. Stillness replaced friction. This is not retreat. It is elevation through subtraction. When unnecessary layers fall away, what remains becomes efficient, unreadable, self-directed. The wager begins to decay here, quietly, because it depended on engagement. They invested assuming participation. You exited without warning. Now their calculations drift without anchor. The shift doesn't announce itself. It simply leaves them working with outdated data while you move forward, unobserved, sealed, awake. Movement changes first. Not speed, not direction. Effect. When you enter a space, interaction bends. Exchanges shorten. Choices hesitate. Momentum recalibrates without discussion. Nothing visible announces it, yet bodies register before minds catch up. Air thickens. Pauses stretch. Decisions reroute quietly. This is not intimidation. It is weight. Density carried without display. Posture alone alters trajectories. Proximity becomes influential. Absence becomes noticeable. Conversations lose volume near you, then resume altered after you pass. Influence radiates without demand. Authority no longer requires declaration. It is inferred, sometimes resisted, often deferred to. Others adjust plans mid-thought. Priorities reshuffle unconsciously. What once needed persuasion now happens through alignment or avoidance. Resistance appears subtle, indirect, careful. It accumulated through restraint, through consistency, through removal of unnecessary motion. Control once depended on visible leverage. Now leverage dissolves upon contact. Attempts to steer outcomes stall before reaching you. Those trained to manage dynamics sense inversion too late. Influence used to flow toward them. Now it pulls elsewhere. They respond by hesitating, conserving, delaying. You do not claim center stage. It forms around you. Space reorganizes. Timing adjusts. Attention drifts in your direction without instruction. This presence carries consequence, not threat. Consequence. Actions near you feel heavier, more permanent. Decisions made in your vicinity acquire caution. Words become measured. Commitments hesitate before forming. This is not fear in its crude form. It is respect filtered through uncertainty. Others feel the shift but cannot locate cause. Assertion would weaken this effect. Silence maintains it. Stillness magnifies it. The less you push, the more the field responds. Authority that asks is fragile. Authority that exists requires no reinforcement. Those who once guided outcomes now monitor reactions. Leverage has reversed polarity. Influence escaped their framework. Control depends on access, and access no longer functions. You move unchanged, yet environments adapt around you. Gravity does not announce itself. It reveals itself through orbit, and now everything nearby is adjusting its path accordingly. Operation now occurs beyond forecast range. Behavior no longer broadcasts direction. Language reduces to minimum function. Observation dominates expression. Calculation happens beneath surface activity, free from emotional distortion. Nothing leaks ahead of execution. Intention stays internal until consequence appears. Timing replaces speed. Restraint replaces display. You allow sequences to unfold fully before intervening. Patterns emerge when patience outlasts impulse. Repetition reveals structure. Deviation exposes weakness. By waiting, you gather advantage. Others surrender through urgency. Motion becomes selective. Every step serves a larger configuration invisible to external metrics. Progress no longer aligns with expected markers. Growth detaches from public indicators, resumes privately, accelerates outside reference frames used to measure advancement. Comparison loses relevance when trajectory diverges completely. Those accustomed to tracking development lose signal. Models fail. Indicators flatten. Assumptions mislead. What cannot be seen cannot be forecasted. What cannot be forecasted cannot be priced. Visibility once fed analysis. Opacity dissolves it. This mastery thrives on delay. Impact arrives after anticipation fades. Outcomes surface without buildup. By the time results register, origin is untraceable. Credit cannot be assigned. Influence cannot be mapped backward. Cause appears detached from effect. You speak less because language limits flexibility. Silence preserves optionality. By withholding narrative, you deny others the ability to frame your movement. Speculation fills the gap, but speculation fractures accuracy. Each observer builds a different theory. None align. Progress continues regardless of attention. Absence of feedback does not stall momentum. External reaction becomes irrelevant input. Calibration happens internally, guided by pattern comprehension rather than response. Those who once quantified potential now face data void. Historical reference provides no guidance. Extrapolation fails. Confidence erodes as predictions miss repeatedly. The framework collapses quietly, unsupported by evidence. What replaces it is not chaos, but autonomy. Direction chosen without witness. Expansion occurring without signal. Mastery expressed through invisibility. The collapse completes not through confrontation, but through irrelevance. Nothing announces this phase. It functions whether noticed or not. That is the advantage. There was never an upward motion taking place. No climb, no gain, no accumulation. Awareness snapped back into its original shape, untouched by expectation or reward. Nothing arrived. Nothing departed. Coherence simply reasserted itself. External observers now remain suspended inside outdated logic. Their projections loop endlessly, feeding on premises that no longer correspond to reality. Estimation frameworks collapse inward, unable to reconcile outcomes with belief. They search for missing variables, unaware the equation itself expired. You exist beyond their perimeter, inaccessible. not through evasion, but through structural separation. Influence requires entry points. None remain. Leverage dissolves where engagement is refused. Distance performs the final function without motion or declaration. There is no spectacle here, no signal flare, no visible triumph. Demonstration would dilute position. Reaction would imply symmetry. Instead, separation defines authority. Refusal finalizes outcome. Silence concludes. Interaction more effectively than response ever could. Identity stabilizes into permanence, not reinforced, not defended, simply unmoving. Applause holds no currency here. Recognition offers no incentive. Nothing external validates what is already resolved internally. Others remain confined within borrowed logic, recycling tactics built for an earlier construct. Reach extends only as far as assumption allows. Imagination limits trajectory. Yours does not rely on either. Chance never played a role. Fortune implies randomness. Selection implies permission. Manufacture implies origin. None apply. Inevitability operates without beginning, without interruption. It does not rise. It persists. The symbol rests inward, unseen, indivisible. It cannot be removed because it was never displayed. Continuity protects it. Autonomy seals it. Nothing external qualifies as threat. This state does not announce completion. It resists narrative framing altogether. Progression continues without arc or audience. Motion without theater. Dominance without contact. What stands now does not seek opposition, reward, or reflection. It remains untouched because nothing reaches it. There was no transformation underway, only restoration.